Hi, this meditation is intended specifically for people going through some kind of a significant emotional trauma. If that's not you, then the practice might not make much sense, but if that might be you, I sincerely hope something in the following half hour is helpful. Usually when I'm giving a Dhamma talk, a reflection, it's often in places like Malaysia, Australia, sometimes with groups of students in India, and in Thai language in the monastery where I live in Thailand. Right now I'm on solitary meditation retreat in my monk's cabin in the monastery where I've lived for the last 6.5 years. This is an unusual Dhamma talk because I can't see any of you in front of me. I'm actually sitting in front of my shrine. I've been editing a few Dhamma talks in between meditation sessions. It brings me quite a bit of joy to be able to share and encourage. And so I alternate between walking, sitting, chanting, taking some time to share some talks that have been given in other places and make sure that they get shared with lots of good people all around the world. Perhaps the reason I'm giving this talk sitting in front of my shrine in my monk's cabin is it's not the kind of talk you could address to a group of people in a meditation retreat. Rather, it's the kind of talk that is relevant to a certain type of person going through a certain type of situation. And so I've been looking at my website, I've been looking at items on Insight Timer meditation app, and I've been considering what subjects have I covered, and is there anything that I've not yet covered that I might talk about that might be helpful to people? And I realize that there is. On this subject of having a broken heart, feeling terribly hurt or devastated, this experience that so many human beings have to experience and live through. And I thought I might be able to offer some words, some encouragement that might be able to help people going through a difficult time. This human situation, we're really extraordinarily vulnerable when you think about it. This body and mind phenomena in the form world, to use some Buddhist terminology. We have bodies, we have minds, flesh and blood bones made of 4 elements, trying to navigate this sensual form world. In terms of experience, we are very complicated, sophisticated, emotional beings, and yet we're so vulnerable. The human birth, the experience of childhood, the various things that we experience, often it seems things that we wouldn't choose, things that we had no idea were about to happen, and that's what I mean by vulnerable. And so I'm currently 45 years old, and I think that most people, when they get to be this age, middle-aged, have probably had a few broken hearts. And so we've all had some experience of getting through painful, difficult, emotional times. So what are the kind of broken hearts that we can have? I think parenting in relationship with our parents. Oftentimes people don't receive the kind of care that in many respects human beings need. Oftentimes there is neglect or unskillfulness, and oftentimes people are repeating habits of neglect and unskillfulness that they experienced themselves. Sometimes people do a really terrible job of parenting their kids, and even so, some of those people are doing a better job than their parents did. Or perhaps it's your children breaking your heart, being vengeful, rebellious, forgetting to be grateful. Other ways people have broken hearts, it can be a business partner betrays one, a best friend betrays one's trust, or, as is often the case, a romantic partner, a spouse, a husband, a wife, a girlfriend, a boyfriend. This experience of falling in love, it can hit us so hard, and oftentimes people feel they have no choice. Somebody seems very special, somebody seems completely trustworthy, we might feel very safe in their company, and in a way we give our hearts to them. And then if things change, that can be devastating. The degree to which we love somebody, if there's qualities of attachment, clinging or craving also present, as they usually are, the degree to which we love somebody is the degree to which we can feel hurt. If something in the relationship changes, perhaps the person dies, gets a terrible illness, has an accident, so much depending upon this person and so much trusting that they'll be there, and it changes, and they're not there in the same way. And it's just really heart-wrenchingly painful. Otherwise, it's the person we fall in love with, and sometimes they fall out of love with us, fall in love with someone else, or they just do something that we never thought they'd do. In a way, we might have had an overly positive projection. Perhaps we projected more goodness onto a person than was actually there. It turns out that they are humans. They have weaknesses, they make mistakes, people change. Or maybe you broke your own heart with your own unskillful actions, a terrible mistake, a bad habit that you just couldn't kick, or many mistakes. Sometimes we disappoint ourselves so much, we break our own hearts. Very common experience for us vulnerable human beings. Different people have different levels of sensitivity, so some people might become broken-hearted more easily than others. Some people have to practice with this experience of having a broken heart several times or many times in their life. Perhaps it's disappointments with a parent, and then a teacher, and then a romantic partner, and then a friend. Time after time, experiences of disappointment, expectations and hopes dashed. What seemed like a wonderful situation, turning literally into a nightmare. So, what do we do with this experience? How do we practice with it in a way that we might grow? First of all, we have to ask, how do we get through it? Sometimes there can be so much pain in the heart, it can feel like you can't cope, you can't survive this. The pain feels like it's killing you. It's important to understand that what we're experiencing is an emotion, a mental feeling, and it's important to understand, this is the wisdom component, it's important to understand that it will arise, stay for some time, and cease. In periods when we're freshly disappointed or recently broken-hearted, it seems like those feelings do not arise and cease. We might have a pain in the heart all day. But when we sharpen our awareness through meditation, just come and sit, close your eyes, don't pay attention to the thoughts, have a look in the heart, and just notice those feelings are changing. They're throbbing, they're swirling, they're gushing. It can be like fire, it can feel like stabbing, it can feel like ice, but when you have a look, it's changing. There's constant flux. You'll also notice, if you're really patient, if you sit long enough, if you just bear with painful feelings in the heart, there are moments where the pain is much less. And then another round of pain can come like a wave of excruciating pain. We do have to make time to just feel and be aware of the incredible pain. And it can be stunning. And at such times, all we can do really is know, mindfully know, not conceptually know. Just be aware with this quality of mental awareness, being conscious. This is how much life can hurt. It's like this. Ouch. And without judging it, just being able to feel, wow, so much pain. Once we allow the space for that pain just to be as it is, then try to notice that it changes. Sometimes it seems completely overwhelming. If you use the analogy of an ocean and waves, some of these waves are like tsunamis, huge waves of pain. But just like a tsunami, even such a huge wave has to recede. And then there'll be smaller waves. And so when the waves of emotion are incredibly strong, sometimes what we really need is to give the love that we were hoping we could depend on from someone else. Maybe they died, maybe they let us down, maybe they loved someone else instead. Whatever it was, whatever the reason, whatever the occurrences that made the situation change, that left us feeling broken-hearted, when we come to reflect on this, meditate with this, try to be with this and heal this, the story doesn't matter so much. What we need to do is just be with the feeling, understanding that what we need is love, and sometimes all you can say is love, love, love. Just try to offer love to the terrible, painful, excruciating experience of grief and broken-heartedness. Try to make space in the mind. Just relax the sense of boundaries, constriction, contraction. Just make the mind open and spacious and just feel the pain and be aware. And just say to yourself, love, love, love. When others have not loved you the degree to which you felt you needed to be, that's the time that we all need to learn how to love our experience, how to find a refuge inside, how to give the love to that terrible pain, incredible grief. Just offer it love, acceptance, holding it without judging it. And we might have to do this many times. But another thing that will be helpful is to notice that it's a feeling, a mental feeling, and notice that it changes, and try to see those waves. Sometimes it can feel like molten steel was poured down your throat. All of your intestines and heart is just burning with pain. Sometimes it can feel like you were stabbed in the heart repeatedly. Sometimes the heart feels shattered. Sometimes it feels bruised, red raw. However it feels, we're just aware of a painful feeling, a mental feeling, holding it in awareness without judging it and knowing its qualities, and then try to notice the ways that it changes, moves around. Using the breath is really helpful. Pema Chodron, a nun in the Tibetan tradition, uses the word to ventilate. You can use the breath to ventilate through the painful feelings, and breathing in, just allowing the breath energy to flow through the pain in the heart, and breathing out, allowing that breath energy to cool down the fire of pain and suffering. Take a few deep breaths and use the breath to try to pacify. Sometimes you can use the breath to pacify the feelings, calm them down a bit. Other times the feelings are red raw, they seem to fill the room, make the mind bigger, the feelings fill the sky, and all you can do is be aware, try to love it, allow it to be until it changes, and know that it will change. When these feelings change, these big waves of emotion come in and then leave the mind naturally, it's really important to notice when they change, when they cease. It's really important to notice how a huge emotion became a smaller emotion. Something completely unmanageable, something that you feel you can't cope with, becomes, in a matter of time, something perfectly manageable, something that's easy to cope with. And then another wave of feeling might come. But if we've noticed the way that it changes, and we really get it on a deep level, when it's at its highest velocity or most intensity, during that time, if we have this wisdom component that knows it's going to change, it's going to get better, there's not going to be this much pain forever, this can help us ride those waves. Just wait it out. And when it really, really, really hurts, love, love, love. Give yourself the loving acceptance that you feel separated from, that for some reason you didn't receive. Give it to yourself. Use the breath. Breathing in, I lovingly accept this. Breathing out, may I be well, may I be happy. It's important to be optimistic, have some hope. And there are many reasons that we can be optimistic and have hope. I once heard a quote, and I can't remember who said it, but I believe it. The heart that breaks can hold the whole world. You see, in the beginning, us ordinary human beings, we love a few people. We love our families, our friends, people we fall in love with. And then we get hurt. And this pain forces us to try to find more resources, wiser perspectives, a bigger picture. And as we train ourselves to be with the pain of life, difficult situations, we learn to hold this incredible pain. We become more compassionate and more empathic, and it becomes possible to offer this kind, non-judgmental acceptance and love to more and more people. So through the experience of having a broken heart, through the experience of being incredibly disappointed, of feeling betrayed, feeling abandoned, we can learn to take better and better care of ourselves. We can cultivate a true refuge in our own capacity to be aware and still and wise and loving. And then we can bring those qualities into our life, share them with others. But it takes a lot of patience, a lot of determination, a lot of courage, and a lot of kindness to just be with the honest experience of an incredible amount of emotional pain. And just to know, this is it. This is what it feels like to be a human being with a broken heart. Another thing that's really important is acknowledging how common this experience is. That's not to negate it. That's not to say it's not something to be dismissed. It's something that has to be tended to with great care. At the same time, we know this is what so many people in the world, so many other people are currently experiencing. What we can do, sometimes when the emotions calm down, there's more clarity, we just get in touch with this wish. Wouldn't it be great, wouldn't it be better if beings could be without suffering? And sometimes just making this wish, breathing in, may I be free from suffering, and breathing out, may all beings be free from suffering. When we can move from incredible pain into an experience of genuine compassion, just really deeply, sincerely wishing, may I be free from suffering, may all beings be free from suffering, may all beings be able to develop themselves, attain to a state where this kind of experience no longer affects them. May we all be well, may we all be happy, may we all be free from suffering. If you can just get in touch with that genuine, really, really broad, boundless compassion, and just offer that you would most wish for yourself, to be free from this incredible pain, just offer that to all beings everywhere who are still in this vulnerable state. May all beings be well, may all beings be happy, may all beings be free from suffering. And so just reviewing a little, understanding that we all have to face this, having a body, having a mind, having a heart, having emotions, not yet being saints, not yet being arahants, not yet being the Buddha. We get disappointed, we get separated from things that we like and love. People betray us, and the workings of karma manifesting in the relationships around us. Mentioning this word karma, there's no judgment. In Buddhism, we understand that there were many previous lives. We've all made mistakes. The response to that should be compassion and wisdom. We get really serious about not making any more mistakes. We don't judge it. We open our heart. Beings under the influence of ignorance, still affected by craving and aversion, when they get irritated, when they get deluded, they make mistakes. When they make mistakes, they make bad karma, and that bad karma ripens as painful experiences and painful feelings. And so we get in touch with this wish and this aspiration to train ourselves to make wholesome karma, skillful karma, cultivate the qualities that will eventually liberate us, and also develop the compassion and the equanimity, equipoise, acceptance. This comes from wisdom, the wisdom that sees that much of what we're experiencing is the working of karma. Trying to see that without making judgments. All beings make mistakes, all beings are experiencing the ripenings of good and bad karmas, skillful and unskillful karma. And when it's really painful, the very best thing you can do is non-judgmental, compassionate response. Love, love, may I be well, may I be free from suffering. And just trust, no matter how painful, no matter how huge these painful emotional feelings are, they change, they cease. It will get less and less. Sometimes with experiences like grief, we feel we've grieved. Sometimes with a broken heart, a partner dies or leaves us. So these strong feelings can come around again at the anniversary of the death, the anniversary of a wedding, the day that things changed. And so we just have to understand this is the way the mind is. This is the way emotions are. We can't completely control them, we have to work with them. And so when you need to take the space to be compassionate, to be kind, to allow it in the mind, in awareness, and then take care of it as best you can with kindness and compassion, and being determined to notice the way that it changes. Another useful thing is the practice of forgiveness. Eventually, when the pain subsides a bit, after we've given it a lot of loving kindness, it might be appropriate to forgive yourself if you made mistakes. It might be helpful to forgive people that we perceived have hurt us, because holding on to a grudge is, in a way, another way that we hurt ourselves. We're hanging on to painful perceptions and hanging on to painful feelings. If possible, when it is possible, we offer forgiveness, if for nothing else, so that we don't have to keep holding on to the pain, so that we can allow it to arise and cease. And also understanding, beings make mistakes. Just like we've made mistakes, other people make mistakes. People's minds are affected by ignorance, they don't understand the truth, they don't understand karma, their minds can become more deluded, sometimes greed for more money, sometimes intoxication, sometimes becoming obsessed or compulsive with sexuality, all sorts of things that affect human beings' minds. And then they make mistakes and they hurt people because of their delusion. In a way, they got lost. And so eventually we have to have compassion for the mistakes that people make under the influence of delusion. But it's usually a several step process. We have to have compassion, loving kindness, patience and determination to be with the painful feelings. And this giving them kind attention, giving them spacious awareness, allowing them and just giving time, they begin to heal. The heart can heal. And it's important to understand that this awareness, the nature of the mind, clear, knowing awareness, nothing can kill this. So no matter how painful, how huge, how seemingly overwhelming an emotion might be, no matter how much pain, no matter how much grief, it cannot kill awareness. You can trust, mindful awareness can take it. it will arise, it will change, it will eventually cease. And awareness, that which knows, will still be there. Primordial awareness, that which knows. In the Thai tradition we talk about Buddho, that which is awake, that which is aware, that which has a knowing nature. The very same thing that knows smells and tastes and sights and sounds also knows emotions, emotional feelings, mental feelings, and that awareness, that is mind. No feeling can kill this. It's much more resilient and spacious than we ever realized. And as we train ourselves to cultivate this awareness and bring it to bear on our experience, it becomes a refuge. You can trust the clarity and the awareness that knows things as feelings that arise and cease, thoughts that arise and cease, impermanent and not self. So I just wanted to say these few words to be some encouragement to people who might be experiencing great pain. Hang on in there. Hold this pain in your heart with all of the love that you can. Give that love to yourself that others may not have. Sometimes we have to be a mother to ourselves, a father to ourselves. Offer the nurturing that an ideal mother would. Offer it to yourself in your meditation. Offer the discipline that a responsible, ideal father would have by being consistent with your daily practice, by not taking intoxicants. Don't do things that will affect your clarity. Sometimes we have to be our own teacher. Remind ourselves with wisdom, behave wisely, skillfully, and sometimes we have to be our own romantic partner. Offer yourself the tenderness, the kindness, the sweetness, the good humor. Be kind, be a friend to yourself. So whatever it is that you might be experiencing, I wholeheartedly wish you every success in coping with it, surviving it, learning from it, and becoming a better, more whole, more beautiful human being through surviving and growing from the experience of having a broken heart. A heart that breaks and heals can hold the entire world in the heart of loving kindness. Be well. When Luang Por Chah went to the United States, first time, a Western monk showed him and translated the Heart Sutra to Ajahn Chah. And he said, this is a description of the highest wisdom, the experience of the highest wisdom. Remember, we were reading in that sutta today, the very gifted monk who flew to the highest heaven realms asking, where do the four elements cease? And each deva, the four kings, Saka, Tushita devas, Brahma devas couldn't answer. And then one kind and embarrassed Brahmadeva said, go back and ask the Buddha. And he asked the Buddha, and the Buddha said, it's the wrong question to seek where the four elements end or cease. What he said was, what you have to seek is where they find no footing, a consciousness which is signless. So this is pointing to Nibbana Dhatu, Nibbana element, the purified mind. So the consciousness which is signless, if you're experiencing a consciousness which is signless, a place where the four elements find no footing, would you have eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, or sense consciousness in that experience? So when the mind, I would assume, is experiencing Nibbana, It's not attending to the sense bases in that way. Ajahn Chah said, the one comment that he made was that it was unfortunate that it didn't give very clear instructions about how to realize that, the state of that particular sutta. Although that's a condensed sutta, I know there are much longer versions where there probably are instructions. But the mantra at the end, Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha, which is Sanskrit, go beyond, go further beyond into Bodhi. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when I attended his commentary on this sutta, explained that this is the instruction about the path contained in that mantra. That's the instruction. So in Theravada, in sutta, we understand that we develop three kinds of wisdom. We develop wisdom in three ways. Listening to wisdom teachings, contemplating what you've listened to, not just contemplating like analytically considering, genuine contemplation. And then through that contemplation you realize, yeah, it makes sense, these teachings make sense, stand up to good reason, rational, logical, true. And then the third way that we cultivate wisdom is through meditation, stabilizing the meditation, deepening those insights through meditation. So His Holiness was saying, that's the Gate Gate Paragate. Go further into Bodhi, and Bodhi is wisdom. The Buddha was enlightened through wisdom. Ajahn Chah also talks similar, but a different description. He says that, first of all, we hear Dhamma. He talks about hearing Dhamma, seeing Dhamma, and being Dhamma. So this gradual training. First of all, we listen to Dhamma and we understand it. Makes good sense. Intellectually, we understand it. We develop conviction. Then through meditation, we begin to see it on a deeper level, going in the level of insight. And then when one actually purifies ignorance, delusion falls away, greed falls away, hatred falls away, then one is Dhamma, purified mind, seeing things in accordance with Dhamma, acting in accordance with Dhamma, teaching Dhamma. So we have three types of ways to cultivate wisdom, which we're doing in this gradual training. Tomorrow we're going to go through the Anattalakkhana Sutta, where the Buddha asks the monks to try to find a self in the five khandhas and the six sense bases. And because those monks, the first 5 monks' spiritual faculties were right, in really paying close attention, and very good samadhi, these rishis in the deer park in India. So with that very focused, sharp faculties, when they attended in that way, this is the middle way. The Buddha's insight in the cave, after practicing austerities, was that contemplation combined with samadhi, enough samadhi to contemplate in a focused and directed way, leads to genuine insight. That was his discovery. And then when he explained that to the first 5 bhikkhus, and they investigated with their concentration and with their mindfulness, their body, they saw that there was no self there. In the Vajrayana, they trained people actually to contemplate emptiness in various ways. In Theravada, how Ajahn Anan has explained it to me, it's through the contemplation of impermanence in particular, and seeing that cessation, when you really train good mindfulness in noticing arising, stay for some time, ceasing, nirodha sanya, ceasing. What Ajahn Anan explains is when we really see the cessation very clearly, you also see that it's not self. So good mindfulness, good, clear, strong mindfulness sees impermanence. And when it sees impermanence with more and more and more clarity, it also recognizes that this can't be a self. It's always changing, there's nothing solid. And it's in seeing that it sees dukkha. So Tanajanan explains that if you see any one of these three characteristics actually, aniccaṃ, dukkhaṃ, anattā, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self, if you see any one of them, you also see the other two. Because the mindfulness that sees the truth sees these three characteristics, because that is the truth of conditions. When you see one of them, you see the other two. And when you see all three, the experience is of emptiness. So that's how Tanajananana explains it, is through clearly seeing with insight, then there's a letting go, the sense of self drops away because it's a delusion. And you experience the empty nature of your own mind without conceiving of a self. So you see emptiness and you experience emptiness. So emptiness is the ultimate truth. His Holiness the Dalai Lama also explains that there is the conventional reality, there's the apparent world, but the teaching on emptiness is explaining is that it's not as it appears. So there is an apparent world, and it has its conventions, and we live according to those conventions. But when we contemplate, we understand that there really isn't a self. And I think when the mind really begins to experience these higher levels of samadhi and profound levels of insight, it can actually not attend to the world element, the loka dhatu. I believe the arahants can close their eyes and experience nibbana without any awareness of the world. When they come out of that experience, they can then radiate their loving kindness into the whole conditioned world with a very, very powerful, purified mind with amazing boundless metta. So coming out of the experience of attending again, acknowledging, allowing awareness to see the world element, they can then spread their loving kindness through the world. So, gradual training, hearing Dhamma, hopefully beginning to see some Dhamma, eventually being Dhamma, listening, contemplating, and then clearly seeing, experiencing emptiness, understanding emptiness. So we use our Buddho, the one who realized emptiness, the one who realized not self, Lord Buddha. And he explained to us many ways to contemplate so that we ourselves will experience this for ourselves. If we just follow the Eightfold Path, 4 foundations of mindfulness lead to the deathless, 5 spiritual powers lead to the deathless. So those 5 bhikkhus obviously had very developed 5 spiritual powers. 1 teaching, and they realized not self. The sermon on the Fire Sutta, Lord Buddha walked back to Gaya and he taught 1,000, I think it is, naked, fire-worshipping, matted-hair ascetics. He taught them about dukkha, that the 6 sense spaces are burning with greed, hatred and delusion. And because we grasp at them and we think we're a self, then the greed and the hatred comes with that. And he was explaining that these 6 sense spaces, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and the mind sense space, are on fire with greed, hatred and delusion, and that sight, sounds, tastes, forms, tactile sensations are on fire with birth, aging, changing, and death. And those 1,000 matted-hair ascetics also realized Nibbana after one teaching. So they were ripe. That's the value of, if one does have a certain amount of samadhi, when you really focus in correct ways, the delusion can be cut through very quickly. So there's various ways to contemplate impermanence, various ways to contemplate not self, various ways to contemplate the body and the mind. One very, I think, simple and effective way is just to really notice cessation. So that's with every breath, in these kind of retreat situations, you notice the cessation of an in-breath. You've got all these hours to meditate. And notice the cessation of an out-breath. And then there's another in-breath. It arises, it ceases, it arises, it ceases. And whatever thoughts you develop a little more space and a bit more clarity, and you can just see. You can't make any one thought stay there. It's always changing. One monk was very angry once, and he came to see Ajahn Chah, and Ajahn Chah said, good, good, good. He wasn't going to make it into a bad thing. This monk was like, what am I going to do with my anger? And he said, I want you to go back to your kuti and I want you to be angry all day. He said, great, go and be angry all day. So the monk went back to his kuti and he really tried to follow his teacher's instructions, and he came back and he says, I just can't do it, I'm not angry anymore. So that, is a very direct teaching pointing to the fact that even if you're really, really angry, you can't be angry all day. At a certain point the mind just gets tired, needs a break from being angry. So that's the same with all of our mind states. You can't be blissful all day either. Experience wholesome mind states, pleasant mind states, neutral mind states, unskillful mind states, painful mind states, but they're all arising and they're all ceasing, and in these retreat circumstances you can just see, that one's gone. Now there's some space, maybe a more neutral mind state. So just noticing that, and using the breath. The breath is what gives you calm in the storm. It's the eye in the storm, the inner refuge, able to pull back from thoughts and feelings. With regards to working with the pain in the body, I think a really important thing is to try not to have aversion to it. So pain is an unpleasant feeling, and the aversion to it is something that we add. First few days of meditation, probably a lot of meditation retreat, probably a lot of pain in the body. That's normal. So important not to make a problem out of the pain and not try to destroy it, not even wish it wasn't there. It's the being mindful of it as it is. You might find, as mindfulness gets a bit clearer over the days, that you can separate from the pain more and more, and just seeing it as a feeling, not my pain. It's good to work with it for a bit, and then if you find it really seems to be beyond what you can work with, then you quietly and mindfully change postures. But try not to add aversion, and when you do, have a good look at that. What's it like when you add aversion to the pain? There's much more suffering actually. So noticing that, noticing the way we add suffering to pain, and noticing what it's like when we don't do that. Okay, there's pain, and then there's not adding suffering to it. So working with the pain, taking it as a teacher. Can this pain teach me how to be really mindful? Can it teach me to separate the pain from that which knows the pain? And working with it as much as you can, and then mindfully, carefully, caringly changing the posture and starting again. When the pain comes up, working with it again. Okay, here's my teacher. And having metta for yourself through the experience, nourishing your efforts, and rejoicing in your efforts. It is a difficult thing to do. Nobody says it's easy, cultivating the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Sitting and walking and sitting and walking, practicing sense restraint, going against the desire to be lazy and relax and seek comfort. So appreciating your effort and nourishing your effort with kindness, and then being interested in pain and dukkha, your teachers. And the dukkha's there, Ajahn Chah, I was saying earlier, it's exactly where the dukkha arises that the dukkha ceases. The place of practice is where the suffering is. So when it comes up, there's something to learn how to let go of, something to learn from. And then to notice, when you can let go, notice the cessation, and you see none of these things are permanent, none of them are me, none of them are I, none of them are mine. So we have a good momentum, many hours of sitting already. Just going to have another 45-minute sitting now, the last of the day. There might be some questions to answer after that. People have been very diligent with the various reflections, meditations, listening attentively, putting forth effort, maintaining composure. People are practicing very well. The subjects of the last few days, body contemplation, and earlier today, death reflection, contemplation of impermanence, all very wonderful kammatthana, meditation methods for developing insight. We do have to keep our practice balanced with practices that uplift the mind and practices which sober the mind. So the body contemplations, the awareness of death, these sober the mind. And this is important for people who think about the future too much, or can't make the mind still, a lot of restlessness, or if there's a lot of sexual lust, or a lot of greed. So when you're seeing the nature of the body more clearly, this lust cools down, and a bit of dispassion, which is very helpful. Of course, later in insight, in the process of developing insight, these kammatthanas deepen and actually liberate the mind, as we know from reading part of Ajahn biography and part of Mechi Gao's biography. It was while doing body contemplation that they had profound mind-changing experiences. They did also mention that they felt disenchanted, dispassionate, sad. So that's part of the process. Ajahn Anan in particular mentioned that he also loved cultivating the Brahmaviharas at the same time, and probably had developed them to the point of being able to absorb on the jhanic level. So Ajahn was balancing his body contemplations with very blissful, sublime states. So there's a few practices we can do to keep things balanced, because a bright mind with well-being is the best foundation for insight. And so we have to know when it's right to calm things down and sober the mind. We also need to know when it's right to buoy the mind up. Remember to have a light touch. And so the metta practice, obviously very uplifting, nourishing. Buddhanusati. So if we actually recollect the qualities of the Buddha, this can give rise to a lot of joy. If we open our heart with appreciation, just imagining this being who could teach people perfectly according to their dispositions, and he would walk great distances to teach one person, such incredible compassion, and liberating many thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of humans in northern India in his 45 years of teaching. So we think of the Buddha's beautiful qualities and incredible example. They say impeccable in conduct and understanding, not just perfect in appearance. Thinking about the inner qualities, it says that his heart quivered with compassion for all beings. So that's what gives him that personable beauty, really lovely quality. Someone who is not just having that scientific precision, that intellectual mastery, but a heart that sees everybody like children who he wants to liberate, remove from all fear and danger. So when we contemplate qualities of the Buddha like that, also very uplifting. Another practice not talked about so much is the Devanusati. It's another of the Anusatis. So the way it's described in Visuddhimagga is you just recollect the qualities of devas. So devas are renowned for having patience, they forgive, having loving kindness, and particularly having restraint. Hiri and Ottappa is what they're praised for having, which is a sense of conscience and a sense of wholesome sense of shame. So it's obviously not all devas, but it's generally talked about the qualities of devas. They have a high level of conscience and a lot of metta and a lot of patience, which was the cause for their being born in the heaven realm. So how it's taught is one thinks of the devas in different realms and their qualities. So the higher you go, the more radiant, the more illustrious, the more beautiful, the Deva's qualities and minds up to the Brahma realms. But sometimes just hearing stories which allude to the existence of Devas, it does brighten the mind. It is interesting and uplifting, depending on one's character. My character enjoys these kinds of stories, and so I thought I might share a few little experiences. When I was 5 years as a monk, it's a little bit of a tradition in Thailand because for the first 5 years you are under dependence of a teacher and you can't go anywhere without their permission and their agreeing. After 5 years you have freedom to make some of your own choices, and so many of the monks go on tudong, wandering around for a while, visiting other teachers and celebrating their hard-earned freedom in a way, and enjoying the wide open road and the expansive horizons, because after 5 years of having to be in the morning chanting, having to be at chores time, having to do this, having to do that, have to, it's very good training, but naturally young men long for a little freedom at times. So I wandered off after my 5th rains retreat alone, just to explore some of these practices. Tudong is an abbreviation of the word Dutanga, and the Dutanga practices are for shaking off kilesa. They're forms of austerity practices. So walking on tudong is part of this tradition, but there's also staying in wild places, staying in orchards, staying in an open field under the sky, various practices that you do to expose oneself to a little bit more vulnerability and practice more renunciation and practice with fear. So I was doing that. I was wandering and sometimes staying in fields, and it was rice had been harvested, so you could come across these big piles of hay in the rice field, and you could set up a little mat and not so many mosquitoes in the cold season, and you could sleep under the stars in the field. And I would wander and I would come close to a village, and so I would stop. The next morning I would pack up my things. I would walk arms around with my things on my back, 2 bags balanced, with the arms bowl out the front, and then usually get some food. Northeast Thailand, most towns in Northeast Thailand have monasteries, and there's a certain time that monks will go on alms round, so often would get quite well fed, and then have the meal at the other side of the town. But I remember it was more difficult than I thought, and in ways that I hadn't realized, because it's very hot. Even though it was a cold season, there's not much forest left, and Thailand is largely deforested. There are some national parks, but there wasn't much forest left, and there was a lot of litter along the side of the road as well, and so there was this sense of wanting to be a forest monk wandering, and here you are in the baking sun, and there's all this rubbish around your feet, and then naturally you get hot and you get thirsty, and there's all these trucks with Pepsi driving past, delivering Pepsi to, because Thais drink a lot of soft drink. And so it was very interesting, because you wanting to be with Buddha as you walked, Buddha, 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 but then the Pepsi truck would go past, Pepsi, Pepsi, Pepsi. There were a notable number of occasions where I thought, I want a Pepsi, and within not very long a car would stop and somebody would hand me a Pepsi. And so that was very interesting. But more interesting than this was there was one day where you get a bit fed up with your desires because you can't fulfill most of them, and there's a lot of blisters, sunburn, sweat, chafed skin, smelly clothes. There's a lot of unpleasant things to work with. And I was being almost facetious one day. I was walking into one village and I was thinking, I was kind of playing with my kilesas as well. I was like, well, do I want to sleep in a field, or do I want to sleep in a forest, or do I want to sleep in a monastery? I was like, no, I don't. I want to sleep in a shelter in a field with a hard wooden floor. And then I'm like, do I want Pepsi? No, I actually want Fanta, which is pretty stupid, but anyway. This man appears as I'm wandering into the village, and he says, I would like to invite you to come and live in my little shelter in the field. And he took my bags and he said, I'll help carry your bags. And then he told his son, he called over his shoulder, he said, buy the monk some Fanta. And so this son of this man came on his motorbike to this wooden floored shelter in the field with 1 litre of Fanta. So you see these things occasionally and I say, oh, now that's interesting. And I think what's happening is it's hard work, and one is trying quite hard. So those devas Buddhist devas who rejoice in monks trying, possibly listening in, and even though the desire is pure kilesa really, I want to sleep in this shelter and I want this kind of sweet drink, and well, they're thinking possibly, okay, well, we'll encourage him. But another thing happened on this trip. I was staying in Dhamma monasteries. Dhamma a different kind of a lineage. Luang Por Man was in that lineage, and Ajahn Mahabua. Ajahn Chah was a little unusual in that he banned smoking in his monastery a long time before other monasteries did. And see, Luang Por Man smoked, and so did Luang Por Chah. And so I think the devas of Thailand might not have a condescending view towards smoking, because they'd seen the Kru Rajan smoking. And so I would stop in at these Dhamma monasteries, and there wasn't much by way of a cup of tea or a decent cup of coffee, but they all had these cigarettes. They all had tobacco, roll your own tobacco. And so I thought I'd try one. And so I tried one, and okay, it was better than nothing. And then you'd wander another few days and you're in another Dhamma monastery and there's more cigarettes and everyone's smoking. And it's kind of funny because before the evening chanting they have their smoke, and after the evening chanting they have their smoke. And so I started to smoke, first time in my life. I never smoked before I was a monk. And I don't smoke anymore, I don't smoke now either. But during this time, I was out and about, exploring freedom. And so I had one cigarette. One monk gave me this cigarette, which is called a krong tip, which means a deva's rib. That's the brand name. And it's probably the equivalent of a Winfield Red or a Marlboro Red. And so I had this cigarette. It was so strong I couldn't walk. I sit down feeling dizzy. Okay, I'm not going to do that again. But then on another occasion I tried a different brand, which was called Sai Fon, which meant falling rain. Now, falling rain cigarettes are a mild menthol. And it turned out that I quite liked that one. And so, but I realized, I was walking altogether for about 2 months, and I realized, you know what, you're getting a bit addicted to this. Whereas before, because they'd give you some tobacco when you were leaving the monastery, okay, take some, there's lots. And so you're wandering in the heat, and it's a little bit hungry, a little bit tired, a little bit thirsty, a little bit sore. And I was like, I might have a cigarette. And then you have the cigarette and you notice that you feel a bit better. And then so I noticed that I was starting to have a cigarette instead of, whereas before I might go under a tree and meditate, I was thinking, I'll have a cigarette. I thought, this looks like not a good direction to be going. And so I gave up. I think I only smoked for about 2 weeks, but then I gave up. But then what was interesting was a couple of days later, I was thinking, well, I know I've given up, but I just want one. I want one of those falling rain menthol cigarettes. And so I turned the corner. I think I crossed the road and I turned the corner. And I'm not joking, there was one perfectly clean falling rain menthol cigarette before my feet. And that's interesting. How did that get there? Now what's interesting about this is weeks later, when I was walking up a mountain behind Chiang Mai to go and pay respects at some relics in Doi Sutet Monastery, very famous monastery, the same thing happened. I was walking pre-dawn and it was weeks since the previous cigarette. And I was walking up the hill and I had the same thought. I thought, it's actually quite steep and quite long and on an empty stomach, and I remember thinking, maybe a cigarette would be good. And so I turned the corner and once again, a falling rain menthol cigarette in perfect condition right in front of my feet. So isn't that interesting? I don't even know how they do it, but it's interesting. With regards practicing in Bodh Gaya, I've experienced some interesting things with this phenomena of Bodhi leaves. Now, many people who go to the holy sites want some souvenirs to recollect the joyful, happy occasion. But there's certain seasons where hardly any Bodhi leaves fall. So November, December, January, there's not many leaves falling in the cold season. Come late February, March, many more. But in that time, they're not falling, or very occasionally. But I remember I was there at that time, and I was like everyone else. I wanted some Bodhi leaves. And there was one morning, I'd made some vow. I was trying to sit, at that time, I think it was 100 hours. I can't remember within what time frame, but I was trying to do 100 hours of meditation during my period of practice there. And I had to be at the tree fairly early, and I had to be consistently there morning, afternoon, evening. And so I remember one morning I'd been to Vulture's Peak the day before, and I got a bit of sunstroke actually. And I went to the Bodhi tree and I was meditating, and I was thinking, I felt quite sick, and I was thinking, oh, you should go back and sleep, this isn't working. And then I had this thought, no, I didn't come just to have peaceful meditation, I actually came to develop more determination, more consistency. So just sitting here with that intention under the Bodhi tree, being determined to fulfill a vow, to increase my capacities, to be more determined, more patient, more consistent, that's what I should be doing. And at that moment, a Bodhi leaf landed in my right palm. And there was this sense of, oh, that's interesting. It felt to me like a deva might have been saying, that's right, Achalo, you should be consistent and determined and just practice, even if it's peaceful or not. So that was a nice occasion. Recently, something happened a couple of times. I was going early in the morning, and one of the first under the Bodhi tree. The different types of Bodhi leaves in different seasons, so if a leaf falls in the cold season, it's usually quite shriveled up. And Tanajana Nun has said that each Bodhi leaf does have some special energy in it, because that Bodhi tree is on the very site where Lord Buddha was enlightened. So there is a very special energy, and the tree does have a special energy. Some of these very gifted monks who have divine eye can look at a Bodhi leaf and know if it's from that tree. It does have particular qualities. But I put my monk's bag down, and I went to offer some flowers. And I came back, and I put my hand in my bag to get a few things, earplugs and insect repellent. And there was this very large, perfectly flat, perfectly smooth, green Bodhi leaf in the bag. And I'm like, wow. And I did my 3-hour early morning session, and by that time the leaf was beginning to shrivel a little. And it was like, I was thinking, did that fall in the day before? Where did that come from? But it really must have fell in those few seconds when I was offering flowers before I came back. And it was really encouraging. The sense of, okay, a beautiful, green, perfectly flat one in the bag. And that was interesting. What happened most recently, I think, is related to another student's good karma, her merit, or her good intentions. So there's recently the monastery found out that land next door was going to be sold, and they were going to build a resort on the land adjoining the women's section. And resorts in Thailand unfortunately often have this karaoke phenomena, and then listening to drunk people singing every Friday and Saturday night is not much fun. And so, although I didn't really want the burden of having more land to take care of, I don't want a resort right next to the monastery. And so I was talking to some committee people, and we decided that we had to try and get it. We spoke to the lady, and she agreed to halve the price of what she was going to sell it because she is Buddhist, and she gave us a year. Now this student from Bangkok, she decided that she would help 1/3 of the cost. It's quite a bit of money. And so she said, when should I offer it? And I said, well, offer it under the Bodhi tree when we make a nice ceremony. This wasn't when I was leading the pilgrimage, this was when I was there for a month of private practice. I was trying to do 300 hours in 33 days of meditation, dedicating that to my father. And so she came, and some other people had an attendant there as well, another monk from the monastery, 2 other monks from the monastery. So it's a small group of monks and close students. She came for a week, and she was also meditating, I believe, 7 hours a day for 7 days, 49 hours. She'd made that vow. She said, when should I make the offering? I said, last thing in the evening when we've completed our quota. And so we were packing up our mats at 8:40. It closes at 9, and they start blowing whistles quite aggressively at 8:45. So I said to her name is Jintana, I said, Yom Jin, I don't want you to offer it to me. Since we're at this holy place which represents the seat of enlightenment of Buddhas, I'd like you to invite the merit or the barami of the Buddha, in fact all Buddhas, past, present and future, and then I'd like you to invite the devas of the Bodhi tree to rejoice. And so I led her in a little ceremony where we did the Namo Tassa, and then she repeated after me, I offer this land for the sake of protecting a practice monastery and for the sake of increasing the lifespan of the Buddha Sasana in this world. May the Buddhas please receive this offering, and may the devas rejoice. Now, a very interesting thing happened. It's literally closing time by this time. Just after I gave the blessing, transferring the merit, dedicating the merit, so she wrote the amount that she was going to offer, within which time frame, and then she offered that. That was her making her pledge. And then literally picking up our bags to leave, and this gust of wind, a very, very strong gust of wind with no rain, blew at that moment, and I'm not kidding, hundreds of Bodhi leaves fell. And so we were running around giggling with delight and at the end of a long day of striving, and we picking up handfuls, and we're trying to find plastic bags to put them in. Now, as soon as that gust died down, another one came. And then we were running around picking up. We actually started to get fussy. We were picking up the nice green big ones and not going for the little ones. And there was only about 20 people left, and usually there's many hundreds of people. There's about 20 people left. And even the guards, they weren't chasing us around, they were chasing us out. They were enjoying the spectacle of these people running around laughing joyfully with their treasure. So that went on for about 10 minutes, and we all got at least 100 Bodhi leaves. This is, for the Thai Buddhists, this is serious treasure. This is, everybody wants a Bodhi leaf from the Bodhi tree. So it's wonderful because now I can give them away to my students in Thailand. But I did have the sense that had never happened before, and the timing was extraordinary. And it did seem as though the devas of the Bodhi tree, or the other devas, facilitated something, and we all got 100 Bodhi leaves. But it was a very sincere and generous offering, and we did ask for the devas to rejoice. So there was, I just like to tell these stories which seem to indicate that some of these subtle-bodied non-humans do listen in and are perhaps capable of rejoicing. Well, I think they are. And so I just like to tell some stories that suggest that. Other stories, since I'm telling stories. A few things happened in my monk's life which made me have no doubt that certain gifted monks have mind-reading abilities. So this comes into our Sangha-nusati, the special qualities of Sangha. So, would you like to hear these stories or not?
Yes.
When I was staying with Thanajananam, it was my second rains retreat, and I went to stay with Thanajan, and that's another interesting, I'll tell you that story too. I was, because I was rich with suffering as a young monk, and I had good teachers. Thanajan Jayasaro gives very good Dhamma talks, and Ajahn Pasano, I'd been his attendant before he went to America, but I felt something was lacking, and I'm not criticizing them, I'm saying more that given the extent of my struggle, I needed extra special help. That's how I felt. And so I actually went to the Emerald Buddha, the statue of the Emerald Buddha in Bangkok, before a period of intensive practice in the jungle. And so I paid respects, and I'd heard that making vows at the Emerald Buddha is quite effective. But it's also said that if you make a vow at the Emerald Buddha, you better keep it. Because if you don't keep it, apparently the devas can also punish. So the vow I made was simply, I want to be a monk for a long time, and I want to be a good monk, but I feel I need a teacher to help me with my challenges. And if there is a teacher that I have an auspicious karmic connection with in Thailand, may I meet that teacher. And so I made that vow, and then I went into a remote monastery called Dao, which means black turtle, and it's a hermitage of Wat Nanachats. It's on the border of Burma in a large space of jungle. Ajahn Pavaro, I believe, spent 6 months there. I've been there 7 times, usually for a 2 or 3 month period. And so this was my second time going there. And I was going in before the group from Wat Nanachat. The group from Wat Nanachat, 15 or 20 monks, will go for March and April most years. But we went in February for an extra month. And so it was curious that during that month, I think there were only 4 monks there, Western monks. Ajahn Kalyanu was one of them. Ajahn Anand decided to come with, I think, 4 or 5 of his monks from Wat Mapchan in Rayong. And so I actually met Ajahn Anand, curiously enough, in a jungle in the middle of nowhere. And it's interesting to note that that hermitage doesn't even have a village, there's no town there. They have to ship food in, and they have Burmese cook making food. So it was an unlikely occurrence. It was also the only time that Thanajan went into the jungle there. And I did have the opportunity to meet him, and I had that very helpful conversation which I've relayed to you before about the experience I had, and Thanajan Anand saying, yes, in the beginning it's like you're in this house that's on fire, and your mind gets more sensitive and you're aware of dukkha, but you don't have anywhere to rest yet. And as you practice patient endurance, you develop this cool place where you can rest. He says the house is on fire, and it is an accurate perception, but the mind doesn't yet have a space to rest. But through patiently enduring, it will develop. And so that piece of advice and that bit of empathy and that perspective at that point in time was extremely helpful. I'm not sure if I would have made it much longer had I not met him. And so then I asked him, am I trainable, Ajahn? Because I was losing confidence in myself. And he looked at me and he says, you have merit, Ajahn, he said. And that was so helpful at that time, because I didn't feel like I had merit. And then I said, so can I come and practice with you? And he says, you may come and practice with me. So that was when I went to stay at Thanajan's monastery for my second rains retreat, having had the very good fortune to meet him there in the jungle. And so, isn't that interesting? Making the vow at the Emerald Buddha, and then that occurred. Then the thing that made me confident that Thanajan may have special abilities is, there were many occasions actually. I think he went out of his way to be encouraging during that time, because it was obvious that I needed encouragement. So there was an out-of-season cold snap, and Thai people feel the cold very acutely because they're accustomed to 30-degree, 35-degree temperatures. So I don't know, I think it went down to 20 and everybody turned blue. But it sounds funny, but their skin actually goes dry and starts to crack when it's 20 degrees. I mean, because they're so used to 30, 35, and their teeth literally chatter. It's quite funny. And now that I live there, I'm a little bit similar actually, so I don't laugh quite as much. But anyway, so somebody gave Thanajan like a box of baby oil, and he was handing it out to the monks to rub on their dry, chafing skin. Now, ever since childhood, I've had this, I don't know what it is, but I don't like greasy feelings. I don't know why, but I don't like greasy feelings. And so I've never used baby oil before. In those days, there was only about 15 monks, so it was this very family-like feeling. And we used to have tea in front of Ajahn's kuti. And so he would come out and chat occasionally, or just come out and walk around. And so on this day he came out and he was handing baby oil, small bottles. And he walked towards me with the baby oil, and I thought, I don't like greasy feelings. And he stopped, and he turned his back and he went back inside his kuti. I felt terrible. I felt, oh, you're getting a gift from an enlightened being and you're going to be fussy? What are you thinking? I was giving myself a hard time. Now the next day at tea, Ajahn Anand called me into the office. He said, Ajahn, come in the office. I came in the office, and he handed me a little bottle of moisturizer with vitamin E. Isn't that interesting? So there were some, that was I think his way of saying, I'm paying attention, and it's okay that you don't like greasy things. And he's not judging me. I gave myself a really hard time when I thought that I don't want it, and he turned around and there was another occasion, I can tell you. Are you bored yet? No. Okay, just let me know if you're bored. So. There are a few other occasions where, sweet occasions where, one day I used to get irritated because we had to do the chores together in those days. Now they've broken it up in little teams, but in those days everybody would meet, except for the team that was cleaning Ajahn Anand's kuti. But everyone would meet and clean one of the halls upstairs. And there are all these different cloths with Thai language on it. You had to use the cloth for the floor, the cloth for the wall, the cloth for the furniture, the cloth for the Buddha, the cloth for the shrine, and I couldn't read Thai. And it used to drive me crazy. And I would say, which cloth is this? And the monks didn't want to explain it every day, and I was trying to learn, but it wasn't that easy. And I was actually the only, Ajahn Kalyana was there. He wasn't coming out for chores because he was studying for the Abhidhamma. And if I understand correctly, he actually came first in the country that year, in Thailand. So he wasn't out to help say which cloth was what. He was studying Abhidhamma, Satu. But I used to get a bit frustrated. The other thing I get frustrated about, because after we clean that hall, we have to go and clean the eating hall down below. And then we'd all sweep leaves. And Thais kind of like doing things in groups, but Westerners prefer a bit of personal space. And we also like things to make sense. It just didn't seem to make sense to all do it together, because it took a long time. It was taking like nearly 2 hours. And you're a young, idealistic monk. You want to have time to meditate. This is a waste of time. And if we broke it up, it'd all be over in half an hour. Blah, blah, blah. And so I'd think those thoughts, well, often. And the thing that really used to bug me was when we sweep the leaves, we would sweep them so there were none left. And it's a bit absurd because it's a forest and leaves are always falling. So as soon as you finish and you turn around, there's more leaves falling. So I just had this sense of, can't we sweep most of them? Can't we just sweep a bit more quickly and just leave a few? Because it really took a lot longer to sweep till there were no leaves. And but anyway, I remember I was thinking these angry thoughts about how stupid it all was one day as a young monk. And all of a sudden, my mind and my body just felt light, joyful, empty. The thoughts fell away, the feelings in the heart fell away, and this involuntary smile was on my face. And I'm like, wow. And I turned around and I saw Ajahn Anand walking in the distance. And I went later on, I asked him, Paul, did you do something when I was sweeping leaves? And he did this interesting body language thing. He said he knocked the mind state out of my mind with his metta. Now this was a very valuable occasion because we identify with our mind states. We think it's ours. If it really is ours, how can another person knock it out of your mind? It's an interesting contemplation, isn't it? And he said, I just wanted you to see what it's like to not have that type of suffering as an encouragement. Well, thank you very much. Could you do it every day, please? She's like, no. It was an encouragement. But now you have to get back to work. Now, I have another similar story, this time with the Dalai Lama. This was very interesting. Would you like to hear a story about the Dalai Lama? So I came to the Dalai Lama's teachings in Melbourne actually many years ago when he taught at the Rod Laver Arena, and I came to visit my parents, and we came to these teachings. A close student from Thailand, a French man, came with me and was my attendant. So we turned up at these teachings. This was before I was staying at Warburton. I think I had 10 Rains retreats 9 years ago. So we went to the Rod Laver Arena, and I got my seat allocation, which was on the stage, and it was in the front row on the stage. I was in the front row on the stage closest to the audience, and it was about 7 meters from His Holiness' seat, and I was the only Theravadan monk, and so I felt a little bit self-conscious. But anyway, I sat down, and then this guy comes up to me and he says, "Can you chant the Mangala Sutta?" I said, "Yes, I can, but I'm not going to." And he said, "Yes, you are. His Holiness has requested that somebody chant the Mangala Sutta." I'm like, "I'm not." He said, "Yeah, you are." And he went away, and he left the microphone there. And by that stage, I think it was about, maybe at least 7,000 people attending that teaching at that time. So His Holiness came on the stage and got to shake his hand. That was nice. And so he's giving his introduction, and he's saying his usual very gracious, diplomatic introduction talk about he doesn't recommend that people change their religion. He recommends that people study their religion, and then if people really want to, they can become Buddhists, but he's not trying to convert people, and people should understand their own faith first. And so he gave his very gracious talk, and he's being very careful. And then all of a sudden he says, "So who's chanting the Mangala Sutta?" He says, "Okay, you." In front of 7,000 people. And so another microphone arrives. There's 2 now. And I see the camera as well. And I'm like, oh God. Now, in the old days, if I had to talk, when I was a young monk, if I had to talk to more than 10 people, my voice would shake with shyness. It would quiver. I was very shy and self-conscious. And I had this choice I had to make. It was like, either I embarrass myself and let down the team by saying, "Dalai Lama, I'm not doing this, I'm too nervous," or I try, and I do it as an offering to him. And so I thought, oh God, I have to try. And so I start to do that, but I'm very nervous, and more than half of me doesn't want to do it. So this is where I feel that I experience the psychic power of the Dalai Lama, because just in setting the intention, okay, I'm doing this as an offering to you, Your Holiness, because I really respect your practice and your example. And so I start with the Namo Tassa, and very kindly His Holiness joins in. So I'm chanting Namo Tassa with the Dalai Lama. Very nice. And I start with the Asevana Chabalanang. When I start that feeling of being Achalo, the guy that I'm quite familiar with, isn't there. And all that is there is the awareness of the next syllable. And I feel that because we've been talking about this, the self-view is a habitual way of perceiving things which isn't the truth. And it's based on the fact that we're grasping the body and grasping the feelings as being a self. Now, His Holiness is always talking about emptiness, how to contemplate emptiness and various realizations into emptiness. And so I think that with the power of his mind, he just pushed Achalo's self-view out of the mind-body experience. So that all that was there, and I chanted this Mangala Sutta perfectly with this strong, clear voice, and then finished the last syllable, and then that feeling of being me came back, and I was like, whoa. And His Holiness is like, thank you. And I'm like, oh, thank you. And so people came and asked me, oh, really good chanting, yeah, that was great. Yeah, what was it like to chant the Dalai Lama? I said, I have no idea. I wasn't there. And but that was a very interesting experience. And then, so the next time I attended His Holiness teachings, I think it was in Sydney, then I was like, it'll be fine. But what's interesting about that experience is, if I had known that I had to chant the Mangala Sutta on stage, in the front row, in front of 7,000 people, alone, I would not have got out of bed that day. it's interesting to see what is possible when at least you have the pure intention and you have the faith and you want to serve the Sangha and be a good example. So it turned out okay. And he did something funny in Sydney, which really, that was a bit rattling actually. Next time I chanted in Sydney, he said, "Okay, Mangala Sutta," to me. And so I started to chant, and the mic's about there, and I started to chant, and I got 2 verses in, and he said, "Stop." I'm like, "What?" He said, "Your voice good. Microphone closer." He made me start again. And in that moment, I wasn't there like before, but then all of a sudden I was back again, and my mouth went completely dry. And so I had it, one second, I had to drink some water and start again. So anyway.
You do his voice well.
I've listened to his voice for many hours. So. There was another occasion with the Dalai Lama. Should I tell you or not?
Yes.
Okay. I went to India. I do have I believe, strong karmic connection with India. So I actually went after my 8th rainy season retreat, and I visited. His Holiness Dalai Lama was teaching a 9-day teaching in one of the monastic universities in southern India. So I went with a good friend, and we were attending that teaching. And I asked Ajahn Anan what would be a suitable gift for the Dalai Lama, and he gave me some relics. And so I thought, wow, some Buddha relics to give to the Dalai Lama. Now the Dalai Lama was teaching, I think it was about 15,000 monks at this teaching occasion, and it's the biggest monastic university, and he had a lot of meetings and a lot of teachings. And I asked his secretary, "I've got this special gift that I want to give him," and he says, "No, there's just no time." And I said, "Look, all I ask is for permission to be along the side of the road that he has to walk by, and to just give it to him." And he said, "Okay, let me see what I can do." So he told me the Dalai Lama was receiving guests very briefly after teaching and before a meeting. And so I was at the end of the line, and there was this long row of Tibetans who'd actually travelled all the way from Tibet, especially to... Oh, and this is very interesting. I'll tell you that too. So, you see, if I get in the mood, there's lots of stories. So, I was at the end of this line, and some of these Tibetans had obviously saved up a lot of money for a long time, and they just want to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama once in their life, and they've come all the way to southern India. And they smelt awful, because it was summer in India, and they'd come all the way from Tibet, and they were wearing thick clothes. But anyway, that's not an issue. That's not the point. So I was behind them, you see. And but one old man, His Holiness must have, I'm sure he has abilities to see when somebody's close to death. And he looked at him and he said, "You're not well." And he said to his attendants, I was right behind him, he said, "Take this man to hospital, and whatever the cost, I'll cover them." And that man actually died that evening. So His Holiness was obviously able to see that consciousness was about to leave. And but see, that old man was so important to him. You also see the power of determination. So important to him to see his guru travelling all the way from Tibet, that he would not die until he'd done it. And then as soon as he received His Holiness' blessing, he died that evening. So very inspiring. Now, I was behind, and His Holiness by this stage he had to go. And so I had my relics, and I had another gift, and I was concentrating my mind just with appreciation. And I thought, I really, really respect your example, your service to humanity. And so I looked up, and I could see His Holiness' face, but there were these silver and gold light rays shining out in all directions, incredibly bright. I'm like, whoa. And I took the next step, and then it was his normal form. And I gave him these relics, and he said, "Thank you." And then he gave me back the white scarf, and then he went. And I was talking with Ajahn Anan about that, and he said, the silver was the Sila Barami. The gold is the metta and compassion barami. And he said that he has that emanating from his body all the time. And he said because you had faith, because he didn't have time to talk to you, he probably used his abilities to help you to see that as his way of acknowledging his gratitude and his appreciation. And isn't that interesting? So when the faith faculty is ripe or powerful, then these beings... Remember we were reading that talk, Ajahn Anand said it was because of these special abilities of his teacher that he had some kind of vision about body contemplation, and his mind became very peaceful, and then he knew it was a correct practice. And Ajahn Chah had told him he needed to do body contemplation, but he had resistance to it. And so one day he had this vision, and his mind became very peaceful, and then, no, I do need to have this practice. And then he said, it was because of the special abilities of my teacher that I had that vision. So Ajahn Chah has used his insight, his understanding about the nature of the body, sent it into his disciple for long enough for them to get it. Oh, this is valid, this will be useful. So I think His Holiness did something like that, just increased my sensitivity and ability for those moments so that I can see. So that was a very nice thing to observe. And talking about devas, when I was, this is the last story. When I was staying with Ajahn Anand another time, he had built his Uposatha hall, which is where the monks chant the Patimokkha, and there's this tradition in northeast Thailand, if you build an Uposatha hall, it's so much good karma, it makes so much merit, that there's a chance that some of your bad karma might ripen. I don't know why they believe that, but they believe it. Or it might be that your karmic debtors want to take revenge because they're upset that you made so much merit, so they come to make some obstructions. But there's a folk belief that if you build that building, you should spend the rainy season retreat in another monastery the year after that. So Ajahn Anand spent that rainy season retreat in a nearby branch monastery with one of his foremost students, Thanajan Tong, and I was fortunate. He invited me to stay with him, and Ajahn Tong was preparing to build his Uposatha hall, and so they were digging the ground, and they chopped down a bunch of trees, and they were bringing in fill to fill in the space. One night after I didn't see this, but the other monks did, but one night after the evening chanting, I think I was actually meditating, but a couple of monks walked out of the hall, and they saw this beautiful green light hovering in the air. A very, very bright, very, very beautiful green colour. And Ajahn Tong saw it as well. And just as we've been reading in the life story of the Buddha, that Sakka, the king of gods, would come and talk to the Buddha, praise the Buddha, etc. So that was apparently Indra's jewel, because Indra's believed to have a green body, and it was Indra's jewel. And he was saying, this is the right spot for the hall. And so the next day, they completely scrapped, even though they chopped down the trees and brought the fill and been noisy. I was a little bit disappointed because I was thinking, oh great, I get to go and practice special meditation with my teacher in a quiet monastery, and it was trucks arriving all day. And it's a large part of forest monastery practice in modern Thailand, practicing with building noise. And so, so they built the hall in a completely different place because that's where Indra said it should be. Isn't that interesting? And Ajahn Pabrit says I should tell you about the porpoise, the dolphin. In the first period of time when I was with Ajahn on my second rainy season retreat, he asked me to join him on a Tudong trip, a trip onto an island, Koh Chang. In those days, nearly 20 years ago, Koh Chang wasn't very developed, and he had a student who had some land on the side of the island which had no roads, no buildings. It's jungle, and it had a crystal clear stream. And so I was there, I think it was with 4 or 5 other monks. Ajahn Anand there as well was staying in our umbrella. You see the monks have these umbrellas and they put their mosquito nets over it. So we're staying in these, I can't remember how many nights, 4 or 5. And this dolphin would come around. We're in this island in the Gulf of Thailand. This dolphin would come around. And I noticed it came around the next day as well. And then the next day. And I think one day it came twice. And I asked Ajahn Anan, I said, what's going on with this dolphin? And he said, the dolphin was human in a past life, but it broke some precepts. And he really liked swimming. And so a combination of merit and karma that he had to be a dolphin. He said, but next lifetime he'll be human again. He's just working through this karma. And he said he can feel the metta of the monks, and he likes it. So he's coming around to feel metta. And should I tell him about the cloud or not? I don't know if Ajahn Anan would approve of me telling the story, that's why I'm slightly reluctant, but don't tell him I told you. So it was the last night, and the monks had actually made a kind of a stage-like thing that the monks could sit on, that at high tide the sea was around us, but we could sit on this using rocks from the stream and from the beach, made a rock wall and filled it in and made it flat. And so I was sitting on there, I believe I was massaging Tanajan's feet. It was 1 or 2 days after the full moon. And all of a sudden he said, look up in the sky. I looked up in the sky, and where the moon was, there was one cloud in the whole sky. And the cloud was in the perfect shape of a dolphin. You could see the tail, and the shape, and the fin. And the moon was where the heart would be. And he said, the Western monk has many doubts. He says, the devas want to encourage him. And the devas made that cloud for you. Isn't that interesting? And there wasn't a single other cloud in the sky. One cloud in the middle of the sky in the perfect shape of a dolphin. Now, I don't know if the deva was Ajahn Anan, or it could be a naga. He told me that nagas have some kind of abilities to affect water element, clouds and auspicious types of rain. So with those few interesting contemplations, we'll do our meditation. And so that brings us to the end of the talk, uplifting true stories of a Buddhist monk. My intention in telling this story is not to encourage people to become fascinated or obsessed about the supernatural, or to stimulate doubts or anything like that. Rather, it's simply to share some personal stories as an encouragement, and to affirm that I really think it's the case that there are very supportive beings in other realms that rejoice when human beings cultivate generosity, maintain ethical standards, and cultivate their minds through meditation, and also that there are wonderful, marvelous results from cultivating the mind. I hope something that was shared was useful.